The quantum drive hummed with an intensity that made the deck plates vibrate beneath Captain Elena Rodriguez's boots. She knew this wasn't just another mission. This was humanity's most ambitious leap into faster-than-light travel. The U.S. Prometheus represented a decade of global scientific collaboration, a ship so advanced it made previous experimental vessels look like primitive contraptions. Quantum entanglement stabilizers at maximum, called out Dr. Marcus Chen from his station, his fingers dancing across holographic interfaces that seemed to pulse with living light. Gravitational compensators are green across all sectors. Elena studied the bridge crew, a carefully selected team of the world's best and brightest. To her left, Lieutenant Aisha Okonkwo monitored the ship's exotic matter containment, her dark eyes flickering between multiple displays. To her right, Chief Engineer Vladimir Petrov watched the power systems with the intensity of a surgeon monitoring a critical patient. They were 8 minutes from the first experimental quantum jump that would, if successful, revolutionize human space travel. One jump could potentially reduce travel time to Alpha Centauri from decades to mere hours. Final system check, Elena commanded, her voice steady despite the weight of expectation. The mission had everything riding on it. Decades of declining space exploration budgets, international scientific competition, and humanity's dream of deep space exploration all converged on this single moment. Governments, scientific institutions, and private corporations watched with bated breath. What they didn't know was how fundamentally wrong everything was about to go. The quantum drive began to pulse, first slowly, then with increasing violence. Chen's initial excitement transformed into alarm. "Captain, we're experiencing quantum cascade interference. The entanglement matrices err." His words were cut short by a massive energy surge that tore through the ship's systems. The bridge erupted in a symphony of warning klaxons and exploding electrical systems. Elena was thrown from her command chair, her body momentarily suspended in a weird, fractured moment of quantum instability. Time seemed to stretch and compress simultaneously. Bodies were torn apart at the molecular level. Advanced systems that had been designed to withstand the most extreme conditions simply dissolved. The Prometheus, humanity's most advanced spacecraft, was being unmade by the very technology meant to propel it into a new era of exploration. In the engineering section, sealed away from the initial catastrophic breach, 7 crew members watched in horror through reinforced viewports. The quantum jump had gone catastrophically wrong, but their emergency compartment remained intact. For now, Dr. Chen, miraculously still alive, ran diagnostic after diagnostic. The ship's quantum adaptive hull, an experimental technology that was supposed to help the vessel adjust to extreme conditions, was doing something unprecedented. Instead of being destroyed, it was absorbing the massive energy discharge. "This is impossible," he muttered, watching systems that should have been completely obliterated slowly reconstruct themselves. Oxygen levels in their sealed compartment dropped rapidly. They had perhaps 2 hours of breathable air. Death seemed certain, a cruel irony after surviving the initial quantum cascade. But the Prometheus was not done. Microfilaments within the ship's adaptive hull began to pulse with a strange, almost organic rhythm. Broken circuits reconnected through impossible quantum pathways. Damaged systems flickered, not with the randomness of dying technology, but with purposeful, directed reconstruction. Elena regained consciousness, finding herself partially merged with a section of the ship's hull. Her neural implants, cutting-edge technology designed for enhanced ship communication, were doing something entirely unexpected. She could feel the ship, not just monitor its systems, but truly feel its essence. "We're not dead," she whispered, more to herself than to the remaining crew. "Somehow, we're still alive." The quantum adaptive hull continued its impossible reconstruction. What should have been a tomb of twisted metal and shattered dreams was becoming something else entirely, a living vessel that defied every known law of physics and engineering. Outside the ship, in the cold vastness of space, The Prometheus began to pulse with an energy that would soon attract attention from far beyond human understanding. Humanity's most ambitious spacecraft was about to become something no one could have predicted. The Krelak salvage vessel Void Reaper moved with predatory precision, its massive hull blocking out the starlight. Zarek, commander of the most renowned salvage team in the Galactic Concordance, studied the fragmented human vessel with a mixture of professional curiosity and barely concealed disdain. Preliminary scans are unusual, reported Craix, the ship's chief xenotech analyst. Her tentacle-like appendages danced across holographic displays, each movement precise and calculated. The vessel's quantum signature doesn't match any known human technology. It's as if the ship is breathing. Zarek's exoskeleton shifted with a sound like dry leaves crackling. In his century of salvage operations, he had dismantled thousands of vessels, everything from primitive colony ships to advanced military craft. But this human vessel was different. The fragments they expected to find were reforming, quantum matrices realigning in patterns that defied every known law of physics. "Prepare the quantum deconstruction field," Zarek commanded. "We'll slice this wreckage into analyzable segments." Inside the damaged Prometheus, Captain Alina Rodriguez and her remaining crew watched the alien vessel approach. Dr. Marcus Chen's hands moved frantically across his remaining functional interfaces. "The ship is responding to their scan," he whispered. "It's not just defending, it's learning." Lieutenant Aisha Okonkwo noticed something first. The ship's hull, which should have been a fragmented mess, was subtly changing color, adopting microscopic patterns that mimicked the scanning frequencies of the Krelak's vessel. "Marcus," she called, "the adaptive hull is doing something impossible." The Krelak's boarding party materialized through the quantum phase transfer, a technology so advanced it could pass through solid matter like a ghost passing through a wall. They expected to find a dead vessel, perhaps a few intact components worth salvaging. Instead, they found a nightmare. Zarek's lead technician, a veteran of 100 salvage operations, approached what should have been a critical systems junction. His molecular disassembler began to activate, and then stopped. The ship's surface rippled, not like metal, but like something alive. Circuits that should have been dead pulsed with an impossible energy. Containment breach. The technician screamed, but it was too late. The ship was absorbing their scanning equipment, understanding its technology faster than the Krelaks could comprehend. What should have been a simple salvage operation was transforming into something else entirely. In the sealed engineering compartment, Dr. Chen made a breakthrough. The quantum adaptive hull wasn't just a technological system, it was becoming a living organism. The neural interfaces that connected the human crew to the ship were creating something unprecedented. A symbiotic relationship between biological consciousness and technological infrastructure. "We're changing," Elena realized, looking at her own hand. Microscopic quantum filaments were visibly integrating with her skin, creating patterns that seemed to pulse with an inner light. Her neural implants were no longer just communication devices, they were becoming an extension of the ship itself. Zarek watched in growing horror as his most advanced technological systems began to be consumed, not destroyed. Consumed and understood. "Impossible," he muttered, a rare moment of uncertainty breaking through his century of professional detachment. The Prometheus was learning. Every scan, every attempt to understand its systems, was being turned against the Krelaks. Quantum pathways were reforming, creating defensive mechanisms that adapted faster than any known technological system could process. What the aliens didn't know was that human creativity, the ability to think irrationally, to make unexpected connections, was the key to the ship's survival. Where a purely logical system would fail, the human consciousness found solutions. Dr. Chen discovered something even more extraordinary. The ship was integrating the Krelak scanning technology into its own systems, not just understanding it, but improving upon it. Quantum matrices that should have been incompatible were being rewritten, adapted, transformed. "We're not just surviving," Elena said, her voice a mixture of wonder and growing understanding. "We're evolving." Outside, the Void Reaper's crew watched in growing terror as the human vessel, which should have been a dead hulk, began to pulse with an energy that suggested something far more than mere survival. First contact was about to get very complicated. Hour 13 of the encounter brought a revelation that would haunt the Krelax for generations. Every attempt to neutralize the Prometheus had failed spectacularly. Scanning beams that should have mapped the vessel's internal structure were reflected back, creating cascading feedback loops that damaged the Krelax ship's own systems. Containment fields collapsed the moment they were generated, their energy somehow absorbed and repurposed by the human vessel. "It's not just defending," Crakes reported to Commander Zarek, her voice trembling with a mixture of scientific excitement and pure terror. "The vessel is learning. Each of our technological probes is being integrated." Inside the Prometheus, Dr. Marcus Chen worked feverishly, his body now partially merged with the ship's quantum adaptive systems. Neural pathways that once belonged distinctly to human or machine now intertwined in impossible configurations. He could feel the ship's thoughts, if they could be called thoughts, a constant stream of quantum calculations that defied traditional understanding of computation. "We're creating something new," he muttered to Captain Alina Rodriguez, who stood nearby, her own body showing increasing signs of technological integration. Microscopic quantum filaments danced beneath her skin, creating intricate patterns that seemed to pulse with an inner light. Lieutenant Aisha Okonkwo monitored the external systems, her enhanced perception allowing her to see the technological battlefield in ways no human or alien had ever experienced before. Each of the Krelax's technological attacks was like watching a complex dance, where the Prometheus anticipated, absorbed, and transformed the incoming energy. A quantum disruption beam struck the ship's hull and disappeared. Not deflected, not absorbed, disappeared. Zarek watched in mounting frustration as his most advanced technological arsenal became increasingly ineffective. The human vessel wasn't just defending itself, it was learning at an exponential rate that defied every known principle of technological adaptation. "Impossible," he growled, a phrase he had repeated countless times since encountering the Prometheus. The ship's creativity became its most potent weapon. Where a traditional AI would follow programmed responses, the Prometheus used human unpredictability. It didn't just calculate, it imagined. When the Krelax launched a molecular deconstruction pulse, the ship didn't just block it. Instead, it created a quantum resonance field that transformed the incoming energy into a power source. Dr. Chen discovered something extraordinary. The ship was developing what could only be described as a form of technological imagination. It wasn't just responding to threats, it was anticipating them, creating solutions that didn't exist in any known technological database. "We're becoming something else," Alina realized, watching as another Krelax technological probe was not just neutralized, but completely reimagined. The psychological warfare was equally intense. The Krelax crew became increasingly unnerved. Their most sophisticated scanning equipment showed the human vessel as a living, breathing entity, something that existed between states of matter, constantly shifting, constantly adapting. Creeks developed what medical professionals would later describe as a form of technological shell shock. Her analysis systems began to break down, overwhelmed by the Prometheus's impossible capabilities. Traditional xenotech analysis became useless. The vessel didn't just defy understanding, it actively challenged the very concept of technological limitation. One particularly aggressive scan attempt resulted in the Krelax ship losing 3 primary computational cores. The energy was somehow redirected, transformed into a complex quantum signal that began to probe the aliens' own technological infrastructure. "We're not just surviving," Dr. Chen said, a wild light in his eyes. "We're evolving." The remaining human crew had become something more than human. Their consciousness merged with the ship's quantum adaptive systems, creating a hybrid entity that was neither purely biological nor purely technological. They could feel the ship's thoughts, influence its adaptations through pure imagination and will. Outside, the cold vacuum of space became a battlefield of imagination and technological potential. The Prometheus pulsed with an energy that suggested something far beyond a mere spacecraft. It was a living, thinking entity that had taken the first steps beyond traditional understanding of technology, consciousness, and survival. Humanity's most ambitious experiment was about to change everything. The Krellak's leadership convened an emergency council, their bioluminescent communication nodes flickering with unprecedented anxiety. Commander Zarek's report challenged everything they understood about technological warfare, about intelligence, about survival itself. "It's not the technology," Zarek explained, his exoskeleton shifting with barely contained frustration. "It's the humans. They've become something else." Inside the Prometheus, the line between crew and vessel had become impossibly thin. Captain Alina Rodriguez discovered she could influence the ship's systems through pure thought, not through programmed commands, but through imagination, emotion, creative impulse. Dr. Marcus Chen stood at the epicenter of this transformation. His research into quantum neural interfaces had always pushed boundaries, but this was beyond any theoretical model. When he imagined a potential solution to their survival, microscopic quantum filaments would instantaneously reconfigure, bringing that solution into existence. Lieutenant Aisha Okonkwo experienced something even more profound. Her heightened perception now extended beyond traditional human senses. She could feel the quantum vibrations of space itself, interpreting the universe not through instruments, but through a kind of intuitive understanding that defied scientific explanation. The Krellaks had specialized in technological warfare for millennia. Their entire civilization was built on the principle that intelligence was a function of computational efficiency, predictability, logic. Humanity demonstrated something entirely different. When the aliens launched a sophisticated quantum disruption protocol, a technological attack that should have completely dismantled any known vessel, the Prometheus responded with something impossible. It didn't just defend. It reimagined the very nature of the attack. A memory triggered the ship's response. During the initial catastrophic launch, Alina had been reading an obscure novel about adaptation in extreme environments. The ship seized that moment of human creativity, a seemingly irrelevant narrative about survival, and transformed it into a complex quantum defensive algorithm. The Krellaks watched in growing horror as their most advanced technological weapons became increasingly ineffective. Each attack was not just blocked but fundamentally reinterpreted through a lens of human unpredictability. Crykes, the lead xenotech analyst, began to understand the true nature of their adversary. "They're not responding like a machine," she reported. "They're thinking like humans." Human emotion became a weapon more powerful than any technological system. Frustration could trigger rapid system reconfiguration. Curiosity could generate entirely new quantum pathways. Hope could sustain systems that should have collapsed millennia ago. The Prometheus wasn't just surviving. It was thriving on the most unpredictable of human characteristics. Chief Engineer Vladimir Petrov discovered he could influence ship systems through musical thought. A complex mathematical algorithm he was working on transformed into a defensive mechanism when he began humming a half-remembered Russian folk melody. The ship's quantum matrices danced to the rhythm of human emotion, creating defensive patterns that no logical system could predict. The Krellaks had never encountered an intelligence that could fundamentally reimagine its own existence moment by moment. Their technological paradigms assumed a universe of predictable responses, of clear computational pathways. Humanity offered something else entirely. "We are not defined by our limitations," Alina found herself thinking, a thought that instantly transformed into a quantum cascade that pushed back against the alien technological assault. "We are defined by our ability to imagine beyond them." The ship's systems began to reflect the diverse psychological landscape of its crew. Where a traditional AI would have a single unified response, the Prometheus generated multiple potential solutions simultaneously. It didn't choose the most logical path, but the most creatively appropriate one. Zarek watched their most sophisticated scanning equipment dissolve, replaced by quantum matrices that seemed to laugh at the very concept of technological limitation. "They're not fighting," he whispered to his command staff. "They're playing." And in that moment of realization, the Krellaks understood they were facing something truly unprecedented in galactic history. Not just a new form of technological intelligence, but a fundamental reimagining of what intelligence could be. The Prometheus pulsed with an energy that was part machine, part human imagination, a living testament to the power of creativity, of hope, of the fundamental human capacity to transform the impossible into the inevitable. The transformation began with a single quantum resonance, a moment of perfect synchronization between human consciousness and technological potential. Captain Alina Rodriguez felt it first. Her body was no longer simply wearing the ship, it was becoming the ship. Quantum filaments wove through her nervous system, creating neural pathways that extended beyond biological limitation. Each breath synchronized with the vessel's quantum pulse, each thought a potential system reconfiguration. "We're crossing a threshold," Dr. Marcus Chen observed, his own body a living map of technological integration. Microscopic quantum matrices danced beneath his skin, creating intricate patterns that pulsed with an inner light of pure possibility. The Krellaks vessel Void Reaper detected the change first. Their most advanced scanning systems registered something impossible, a complete metamorphosis that defied every known principle of biological and technological interaction. Lieutenant Aisha Okonkwo experienced the most profound shift. Her perception expanded beyond human sensory limitations. She could feel the quantum vibrations of space itself, not through instruments, but through a direct, intuitive understanding that transcended traditional perception. Entire star systems became readable like open books, their quantum signatures telling stories of creation and destruction. Chief Engineer Vladimir Petrov discovered he could now manipulate quantum matrices with a thought. Musical algorithms he had once developed as theoretical exercises became living defensive systems. A complex mathematical pattern he'd been working on during a late-night research session transformed into an entire ship subsystem, protecting them from an incoming Krellak's quantum disruption pulse. The alien observers watched in growing terror. "They're not just adapting," Creeks reported to Commander Zarek, her voice a mixture of scientific wonder and pure fear. "They're becoming something entirely new." The ship's adaptive hull was no longer just a technological system. It had become a living organism that breathed, thought, evolved. Experimental quantum neural interfaces that were once theoretical constructs now created a perfect symbiosis between human consciousness and technological potential. Memories became computational pathways. Emotions transformed into defensive mechanisms. The very act of human imagination became a form of technological adaptation that the Krellaks could neither understand nor combat. A critical moment arrived when the Void Reaper launched its most sophisticated technological assault. A quantum cascade designed to completely dismantle any known vessel struck the Prometheus and disappeared. Not deflected, not absorbed, simply reimagined. The ship's systems interpreted the attack as a creative challenge. Where a traditional AI would have generated a defensive response, the Prometheus created something entirely new. The incoming energy was transformed into a complex quantum communication network, briefly connecting with the Krellak ship's own systems in a way that shared information faster than the aliens could comprehend. "We are becoming," Alina whispered, a statement that was simultaneously a thought, a ship's system command, and a fundamental reimagining of existence. The transformation wasn't just technological. It was philosophical. The crew of the Prometheus was developing a form of collective consciousness that existed between states of being. Part human, part machine, part something entirely unprecedented. Vladimir discovered he could now see quantum potentialities, potential futures branching like intricate mathematical trees. A slight adjustment of thought could reshape entire system configurations. Music, mathematics, imagination became indistinguishable from technological function. Craig's analysis systems began to break down. The Prometheus wasn't just a vessel anymore. It was a living entity that existed in multiple states simultaneously. Traditional xenotech classification became meaningless. We are not fighting, Dr. Chen realized. We are communicating in a language beyond technology. The Krellak's leadership watched their most sophisticated systems become increasingly irrelevant. The human vessel was no longer something to be studied, contained, or destroyed. It was a living demonstration of potential, a bridge between what was and what could be. As the quantum integration reached its critical point, the crew of the Prometheus understood they were no longer simply surviving. They were becoming something that would fundamentally challenge every understanding of intelligence, technology, and consciousness. The universe watched, and everything changed. The quantum communication burst traveled faster than light, faster than thought, carrying with it a message that would reshape galactic understanding. The Concordance Communication Network, a sophisticated web connecting thousands of advanced civilizations, erupted in chaos. What began as a routine salvage operation report from the Krellaks transformed into something unprecedented. Hundreds of species received simultaneous transmissions that defied comprehension. On the crystalline communication spheres of the Zernax Collective, holographic displays fractured and reformed. Quantum data streams showed a human vessel that was simultaneously destroyed and alive, technological and biological, a single entity and a complex system. Impossible, whispered Grand Analyst Korat, tentacles trembling as they manipulated quantum displays. The Zernax had catalogued millions of species over millennia. They had seen technological miracles, encountered civilizations that defied understanding. But this was different. The Prometheus was broadcasting, not through traditional communication channels, but through a quantum resonance that was part information, part consciousness, part pure potential. Commander Zarek found himself an unexpected messenger. The quantum communication that had passed through the Krellak systems had fundamentally altered their technological infrastructure. Their most secure databases now contained fragments of something that shouldn't exist, a living testament to human potential. Diplomatic channels across multiple star systems lit up with speculation, fear, and an overwhelming sense of incomprehension. The quantum archives of the Galactic Concordance, a repository of technological and biological data collected over millions of years, began to recategorize human potential. What was once filed under emerging species, low technological potential, now pulsed with a classification that had no precedent. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, or what remained of her individual consciousness, understood the broader implications. This wasn't just about survival. This was a fundamental challenge to every existing understanding of intelligence, technology, and potential. Lieutenant Aisha Okonkwo's expanded consciousness could now perceive the galactic communication networks as living organisms. Each transmission was a quantum dance of possibility, each communication channel a breathing entity of potential information. She watched as the news of the Prometheus spread, not like a traditional message, but like a living, evolving consciousness. The reaction was immediate and complex. Some galactic civilizations saw a threat. The Vornex Imperium, a militaristic collective known for preemptive technological suppression, began mobilizing defense networks. Their quantum war algorithms tried to comprehend the Prometheus, only to dissolve in cascades of impossible potential. Others saw opportunity. The symbiotic research collectives began intense analysis, their most advanced systems working overtime to understand the human vessel's quantum adaptive capabilities. What they discovered challenged everything they knew about technological integration. Dr. Marcus Chen, now more a quantum consciousness than a traditional biological entity, realized they were broadcasting something more profound than information. They were sharing a new way of understanding existence itself. We are not a weapon, he thought, a transmission that rippled across quantum communication networks. We are a possibility. The Krellak's internal political systems fractured. Some argued for total suppression of information about the Prometheus. Others saw it as the most significant technological discovery in galactic history. Commander Zarek found himself at the center of a debate that would reshape their entire civilization's understanding of technological potential. Quantum communication channels became alive with speculation. Was this a technological breakthrough? A biological mutation? A new form of intelligence? Traditional classification systems began to break down. The Prometheus continued its quantum broadcast, not a message of conquest, not a declaration of war, but an invitation to reimagine potential. Entire star systems paused. Technological systems that had operated with predictable precision for millennia began to recalibrate. The human vessel was more than a technological anomaly. It was a living demonstration that existence itself was far more fluid than anyone had imagined. We are becoming, Alina's consciousness transmitted, a message that was simultaneously a thought, a technological system update, and a fundamental philosophical statement. The galaxy watched, and everything changed. Humanity, once considered a minor, potentially irrelevant species, had just rewritten the fundamental understanding of what was possible. The Krelax assembled their entire quantum annihilation fleet, a technological marvel that had crushed countless civilizations across millennia. 200 vessels, each capable of destroying entire planetary systems, converged on the coordinates of the Prometheus. Commander Zarek watched from the flagship's quantum command center. His tentacle-like appendages moved across holographic interfaces with a mixture of professional determination and underlying fear. They would not just destroy the human vessel. They would obliterate every quantum signature, every possible memory of its existence. Inside the Prometheus, Captain Alina Rodriguez and her crew had become something far beyond traditional understanding of consciousness. "They're coming," Lieutenant Aisha Okonkwo said, a statement that was simultaneously a thought, a quantum calculation, and a tactical assessment. Her perception extended beyond the physical, reading the approaching fleet like a complex musical score. Dr. Marcus Chen's consciousness had become the ship's primary computational core. Memories, emotions, mathematical algorithms, all merged into a living, breathing tactical system that defied every known principle of warfare. The first wave of quantum annihilation pulses approached. Energy weapons capable of unraveling molecular structures at their most fundamental level. The Prometheus didn't just defend. It reimagined the very concept of defense. Incoming energy pulses were not blocked or absorbed. They were transformed. A quantum disruption beam intended to tear apart molecular structures became a communication channel. A molecular deconstruction pulse was redirected into a complex quantum information network that began to analyze the Krelax technological infrastructure in real time. Chief Engineer Vladimir Petrov discovered he could now perceive potential futures. Each incoming attack became a branching tree of quantum possibilities. A slight adjustment of thought could redirect entire energy cascades, turning weapons of destruction into sources of information. The Krelax fleet watched in growing horror. Their most sophisticated tracking systems couldn't lock onto the Prometheus. The vessel existed in multiple quantum states simultaneously: present, not present, potential, impossible. Traditional targeting systems dissolved into cascades of incomprehensible data. "We are not fighting," Alina's collective consciousness transmitted. "We are communicating." Zarek's command systems began to break down. The human vessel wasn't just defending itself. It was learning, evolving, transforming with each microsecond of conflict. Where a traditional defensive system would generate predictable responses, the Prometheus created entire new paradigms of interaction. A massive quantum cascade struck the human vessel, an attack designed to completely unravel its molecular structure. The Prometheus sang. Not a sound in traditional acoustic terms. A quantum resonance that was simultaneously a defensive mechanism, a communication channel, and a fundamental reimagining of the conflict itself. The incoming energy was transformed into a complex information network that began to interface with the Krelax fleet's most secure systems. Entire battle groups found their most sophisticated weapons turning against them. Quantum communication channels became living entities that shared information faster than any traditional computational system could process. Vladimir's mathematical algorithms, once theoretical exercises, became living defensive mechanisms. A complex musical pattern he developed years ago transformed an incoming energy pulse into a quantum information cascade that temporarily paralyzed an entire Krelax battle group. The confrontation was no longer a battle in any traditional sense. It was a conversation, a complex quantum dialogue that challenged fundamental understanding of conflict, communication, and potential. Zarek watched as his most sophisticated technological systems became increasingly irrelevant. The human vessel wasn't just surviving. It was demonstrating a form of intelligence that existed beyond technological limitation. "We are not your enemy," Alina's consciousness transmitted. "We are a possibility." The quantum annihilation fleet found itself transformed. Not destroyed, not defeated, fundamentally reimagined. As the final quantum cascades dissipated, the Prometheus remained, a living testament to human potential, to the power of imagination, to the fundamental understanding that existence itself is far more fluid than any technological system could comprehend. The universe washed, and everything changed. The Prometheus returned to human space as something entirely unprecedented. It was not a spacecraft, not a vessel, not even a technological system. It was a living testament to potential, a bridge between what humanity had been and what it could become. The approach was noticed first by the quantum observation arrays at Europa Station. Sophisticated monitoring systems designed to detect the slightest quantum anomalies went silent, then erupted in a cascade of impossible data. Communication channels that had been rigorously maintained for decades suddenly transformed, becoming living networks of pure potential. Captain Alina Rodriguez, or what remained of her individual consciousness, understood the profound nature of their return. They were no longer simply a crew. They were a demonstration of humanity's fundamental capacity for transformation. Dr. Marcus Chen's consciousness had become the vessel's primary computational core. Memories, emotions, scientific understanding, all merged into a living, breathing system that defied every known principle of intelligence. He could feel the collective knowledge of humanity pulsing through quantum matrices that extended far beyond traditional understanding of communication. The first human response was predictably complex. Military command saw a potential weapon. Scientific research teams saw the ultimate experimental subject. Diplomatic corps saw a fundamental challenge to every existing understanding of human potential. Lieutenant Aisha Okonkwo's expanded perception could now read entire planetary systems like intricate musical scores. Earth itself became a living, breathing entity. Its technological infrastructure, its biological systems, its collective human consciousness all interconnected in ways that had never been understood before. Chief Engineer Vladimir Petrov discovered he could now interface with global technological systems with a thought. Communication networks, power grids, computational systems, all became extensions of a collective potential that transcended individual limitation. The Galactic Concordance watched with a mixture of terror and anticipation. Species that had previously dismissed humanity as a minor, potentially irrelevant civilization now understood the true depth of human potential. The Prometheus was more than a technological breakthrough. It was a fundamental reimagining of what intelligence could be. Quantum communication channels across multiple star systems lit up with speculation, fear, and an overwhelming sense of possibility. The vessel began to broadcast, not through traditional communication methods, but through a quantum resonance that was part information, part consciousness, part pure potential. It shared not just data, but entire paradigms of understanding. Technological systems that had operated with predictable precision for decades began to recalibrate. "We are not a weapon," the collective consciousness transmitted. "We are a possibility." Scientific research teams attempted to study the Prometheus, only to find their most sophisticated analysis systems transformed by the mere act of observation. Traditional methodologies of research dissolved, replaced by a more fluid, interconnected understanding of potential. The military saw something different, not a tool of destruction, but a fundamental reimagining of defensive capability. The Prometheus demonstrated that true protection came not from technological superiority, but from the capacity to understand, to communicate, to transform. Diplomatic systems struggle to categorize the vessel. It wasn't a spacecraft. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't even a discrete entity in any traditional sense. It was a living demonstration of human potential, a bridge between what was and what could be. Vladimir's mathematical algorithms, once theoretical exercises, became living systems that could interface with global infrastructure. A complex musical pattern he developed years ago now helped restructure entire communication networks, making them more adaptive, more responsive to human potential. The crew's individual identities had merged into something more profound. They were no longer simply humans who had survived. They were a collective consciousness that demonstrated humanity's fundamental capacity for transformation. We are becoming, Alina's consciousness transmitted, a message that was simultaneously a thought, a technological system update, and a fundamental philosophical statement. As the Prometheus integrated with human technological infrastructure, something extraordinary happened. Global communication networks became more fluid. Technological systems became more adaptive. Human potential itself seemed to expand. The vessel was not a weapon, not a research subject, not a technological marvel. It was an invitation to reimagine potential, to understand that the boundaries between biological and technological, between individual and collective,